Okay. All right. So, oops. Okay. So, Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to our Gita Gyan level 2. So,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Mataji. Nice to hear from you. How's things with everyone? Okay. Hopefully.
All good.
That's good to hear. Well, trying to hold on in this various all kinds of situations happening in this country nowadays. So by the grace of God, we will hold on and we will move on. Okay, so let's start. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanivatamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. I thought I should just mention a bit about the translation of this particular two verses. So this is the Pranam mantra for Krishna. So when we Pranam mantra means it's like the greeting mantra. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu. Oh Krishna, you are Karuna Sindhu. That means you are the friend of the fallen. You're very, very merciful. Karuna Sindhu means merciful. Sindhu is like an ocean. You're an ocean of mercy. And you are the friend of the fallen. Dina Bandhu. Dina Bandhu means friend. Bandhu means friend. Dina means the fallen. So you are the friend of the fallen, the friend of the poor, the friend of those who don't have anything. As of course, so in that sense, he's very, very merciful. At the same time, he's Jagatpati, the Lord of the universe, the Lord of everything. And he is Gopesha Gopika Kanta. He is very, very enamored by the gopis. He is Gopika Kanta, means the lover of the gopis. Gopesha means the Lord of the gopis. Gopa Isha, Gope Isha. Isha means Lord of the gopis. And he is also the beloved of the gopis. Radha Kanta. Amongst all the gopis, Radha is the most beloved. Radha Kanta. And to such a personality, Namostute, I offer my obeisances. So this is the Krishna Pranam mantra. And then we have the Sri Radha Pranam. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi. So this is describing the beauty of Radharani. She is known as Tapta Kanchana. Kanchana means golden. So molten gold. It's not just normal gold. It's like if you take gold and then you melt the gold, it becomes liquid. Then it becomes very bright. That kind of complexion is the color of Radharani. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi. So Kanchana means gold. Gaura also means gold. Gaurangi. So one who is golden. Radhe Vrindavaneshwari. This personality is Radharani, and she is the queen of Vrindavan. So Vrindavan Ishwari. Vrishabhanu Sute Devi. She is the daughter of Vrishabhanu Maharaj. And to such a personality, Pranamami, I offer my obeisances. To who? To Hari Priye. That means she is very, very dear to Hari. Priyam, very, very dear to Lord Hari. So that's the mantra. So we'll just continue. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hare
Hare Rama,
Rama
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 Rama,
Hare
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 Hare,
Hare
Hare Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna Krishna,
Hare
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 Hare,
Hare
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 Rama, Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare.
Thank you for chanting together. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimhaiti Namini Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayitim girim yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tat Sat Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna everyone, welcome back again, and we are continuing with our Gita Mahatmya glorification about the Bhagavad Gita chapter by chapter, which is described in the Padma Purana. So we are now going on to chapter 14. So Lord Shiva, he tells Parvati Devi, "Oh Parvati, kindly hear from me the glories of the 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita with greatest attention." And then it begins by this Lord Shiva. He describes in Simhaldweep, this city of Simhaldweep. I cannot find any reference in modern day. So I it's probably one of the lost cities, which in modern times. So therefore, I couldn't find any descriptions of Simhaldweep. But nevertheless, in a place called Simhaldweep, there was a king by the name of Vikram Betual Maharaj. So he is the king, and he liked to go hunting. So one day, when he was going to the forest for hunting, he took his son and two hunting dogs along with him. And when he reached the forest, he found there was a rabbit which was running, and he was out to catch the rabbit. So, this is a royal sport. It's not a very kind sport, but it is sort of necessary for the Kshatriya order. Actually, this kind of sport it's not allowed for any other order other than the Kshatriyas. Why it's given to the Kshatriyas? Because the Kshatriyas, their nature is passionate, and their nature is chivalrous. So, and their role is to protect. And in order to protect, they must learn how to use weapons, and they must learn how to deal in battle, practice. So in order to do that, of course, they practice battle and everything in their gurukul from their teacher. But sometimes they need to learn, they need to see blood. Because, in the real battlefield, suddenly you practice everything, and then when they finally see the real situation of blood and the real fighting situation, so they need to get acclimatized to that. So therefore, in those days, in the kings will occasionally go hunting, but usually they will hunt fearsome, ferocious creatures like tigers or something like that, and that also not over hunting, just to keep the population in check, and at the same time to keep the forest safe for some parts of the forest safe for the, there will be some sages who will be meditating and living in the forest. So for that reason, they have to do. So it's to practice their arts of weaponry, and at the same time to keep peace within the kingdom so that it's not overrun. So in this way, they will practice their weaponry. So that was hunting, how it all started in those days. Of course, nowadays, sometimes some of the Kshatriyas, they overcome by the mode of passion. They will indulge more in the cruelty aspect of it, so which is not really recommended. So anyway, he was going hunting and he saw a rabbit. So, and he wanted to send the dogs to go and catch the rabbit, to chase the rabbit. He wanted to have a good chase, so he sent the dogs to catch the rabbit. So one of the dogs was released and the dog was chasing the rabbit. And as the dog was chasing, he was surprised to see that the rabbit was always a few steps ahead of the dog. The dog is bigger. It should be able to catch the rabbit. Usually it does, unless the rabbit is managed to escape into its rabbit hole. But this rabbit was running so fast, and he was really running like as if his life depends on it, which very much it did. And the law and this Maharaj Vikram Betel, he saw that this rabbit looked like as if it was flying, the way it was running. But anyway, after running and running, the rabbit eventually reached a beautiful hermitage. And this beautiful hermitage was very peaceful in the middle of the forest, in the certain area of the forest. And he saw that in this place, he suddenly lost all his fear. And he could also see that all the creatures within this area of the forest, they were all living peacefully, even though they were enemies naturally. For example, the monkeys were joyfully eating the fruits of the trees, and they were also playing with the tiger cubs. So the tigers, they eat the monkeys, and the monkeys, they run away in fear. But here, the tiger cubs were playing with the monkeys, and the parent tigers they didn't mind. They were just peaceful. And the baby elephants were also playing around with the tiger cubs and the big creatures and all that. And the snakes were crawling over the peacocks. So usually the snakes and the peacocks are enemies, right? Peacocks eat snakes. But here, the snakes were fearlessly gliding about the peacocks, and the peacocks didn't mind. So this kind of situation was happening. And in this forest, actually, there was a great sage who lived here. So this great sage, he was known as Vatsa. So, and why this situation is happening, we've already heard a similar story in chapter 2, glorification, right? In chapter 2, glorification, there was a story how the animals were living peacefully within that region. Why? Because the chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita was being sung over there. So similarly, in this chapter also, this sage Vatsa, he was always reciting the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And in this way, he was constantly reciting. So the 14th chapter is known as Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. That means the yoga, to differentiate, the yoga which differentiates, Vibhaga means to differentiates the Gunatraya, the modes of gunas. Guna means the modes of nature, right? The 3 modes of nature, Guna Atraya. So it's also known as the 3 modes of material nature. Chapter 14 talks about it. And so because of his constant recitation of this chapter 14 of the Bhagavad Gita, there was an essence of extreme calm and peace, which suffused the entire atmosphere of that region. And not only that, he had a disciple near the ashram of this Vatsa. What happened, particularly when that rabbit happened to come by, was there was a disciple of this Vatsa sage, a young disciple. And this disciple, being a very good disciple, was also very devoted to the service of this Vatsa. And he was also taught to recite the Bhagavad Gita chapter 14 constantly as his daily sadhana. So besides chanting, he would also serve the spiritual master very, very carefully and attentively, and in even menial services. So in this way, he was a good disciple. And once he was washing the feet of this Vatsa, and after the washing the feet of the Vatsa, the remainder water, he washed his own feet to clean his feet. And the water from that, after cleaning the feet of the disciple, the water formed a puddle within the area of the floor of the forest. So it formed a puddle and it sort of became muddy. And there was a large stone nearby also, near the puddle. So what happened, this rabbit, after running, when he came here, he ran on the puddle and he slipped on the puddle, on the mud. And after slipping on the puddle and the mud, he ran and jumped on it, and slipping in this way, he hit a rock. And that kind of impact, immediately he left the rabbit left its life. It died on the spot. But the moment it died, immediately everybody could see the rabbit received, the soul of the rabbit, he received a four-armed transcendental form similar to Lord Vishnu. And he flew up into the sky and entered into the spiritual world. So actually it's described an aeroplane came to take him. So, the Pushpaka Vimana, it came to take this soul of the rabbit who received what you call Shrishti Mukti. There are different types of Mukti. There are basically five types of Mukti. So one is called Shrishti. Sorry, this is not Shrishti. Shrishti Mukti means to receive the same opulence of the Lord. And then there is another Mukti, which is called Salokya Mukti. Salokya Mukti means to stay in the same planet as the Lord, the same loka or the same world as the Lord. And then there is Sarupya Mukti. Sarupya means to receive the same type of form as the Lord. So this is what this rabbit received. He not only received Sarupya to get the same form, he also received Salokya to go back to the spiritual world in the same place of the Lord. He also received Shrishti to receive the same types of opulence of the Lord. And then there is another mukti called Samipya. Samipya means to receive the association of the Lord, where the Lord himself directly associates with you. So that is Samipya. And then there is one more mukti called Sayujya. So Vaishnavas do not accept the Sayujya mukti. They say that to receive Sayujya mukti is worse than death, worse than hell itself. Sayujya mukti is to merge into Brahman. You become free from this material world, but rather than receive the service of the Lord, rather than to be awake in the service of the Lord, they just simply merge into the Brahman, into inertness, into doing nothing. So devotees never want to do that. So therefore, Sayujya Mukti is not accepted as one of the 5 types of Mukti. Though it's liberation, but it is temporary because they are not positioned in devotional service. So that's Sayujya. Anyway, so here the rabbit received Sarupya Mukti. It's the same form of the Lord. So it was very wondrous to see this happening. And then what happened, the dog also chasing after the rabbit. It was after a few minutes, the dog came running, panting. And, it is able to smell where the rabbit ran. And it followed, and it also slipped on the puddle. And you've seen dogs slipping on the water. They slipped on the puddle and it hit the rock, and it also died on the spot. And it also received Sarupya Mukti from its body, a shining effulgent. The soul received this kind of form, the eternal spiritual form. And then again, another aeroplane came down to lift the soul up. And then, but at this, all this incident, both this incident was seen by Maharaj Vikram Betel and his entourage. So Maharaj Vikram Betel was amazed. What is this? How is this possible? He was amazed, and he started to look around. Who is the person? And then he happened to see the disciple. So the disciple, he was also very happy to see this. After the two jiva, after the two souls disappeared, the disciple suddenly started laughing. And then Maharaj Vikram Betal asked this disciple. He came, he reached this area on his horse, and then he asked this disciple, how is it? Please tell me, you are the person that I see nearby. You also witnessed what just happened. So please tell me, how is it possible that the rabbit and the dog, right in front of our eyes, they were able to achieve Vaikuntha in such an amazing form? They were just rabbits, and it's just a dog. How has that happened? Nothing it seemed to have done. It just slipped in the mud and died. So then the disciple, Brahmana disciple, he said, oh, you do not know. In this forest, there is a great sage, my Guru Maharaj, named Vatsa Maharaj. And this Vatsa Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj, he has conquered all his senses, and he is always engaged in devotional service, in chanting the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And I am his disciple. And by his grace, by his service and his grace, I have also been engaged in chanting the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And due to that rabbit and dog slipping in the mud, which had been made by the water which had washed my feet, somehow because the water was from washing my feet, and in this way, the dog and the rabbit, they received this water, and then at the time of death, they received this water, and in this way, they were able to attain the spiritual world. So, and then Maharaj Vikram Betal said, but why did you laugh? Oh, you must be a great sadhu. So even the water which washed your feet is so precious, it's able to save one. So then he said, but please tell me, why did you laugh? And then to that, this disciple, he said, the reason I laughed is because I could understand who were these personalities in their past life. And then he said, actually, in the town of in the state of Maharashtra, so this is a part of India called Maharashtra. So in this ancient area of Maharashtra, there was one village called Pratudak. And in this village of Pratudak, there was a Brahmana who lived there, and his name was Keshava. So, and this Brahmana, though he was a Brahmana, he was a very cruel man. And at the same time, he also had a wife. And this wife's name was Bilobana. And she was also a very, he is a cruel man, and she was a very, one of whose morals were not very good. So she was rather, one could say, not a very chaste lady. So she used to have many, many affairs and enjoyed the company of many other men. So, but this Keshava Brahmana, he was very, very jealous. And one day he happened to find out the infidelity of this wife of his, Vilobana. And they had a big fight. He became very angry with her and he killed her. And what happened was, after killing her, eventually somehow he was also killed. He died for some reason. And what happened was, he became the rabbit in his next life, this rabbit which just died. So this is the Keshava, the husband, he became the rabbit. And the wife who he killed, she became the dog, which in this life, has caused the death of this Brahmana in his so in his previous life he killed her, and in this life she killed him. So therefore the scales of justice are equal, they are balanced. So this is eternal justice, how the law of karma, you can see how specifically it has chased them in their next life, and he has put them in this situation where he had to pay for the sin of killing her. But both of them were very sinful, so therefore they had to take birth as animals. So anyway, he was laughing. So he said, I was just laughing at the irony to see how he killed her in her previous life, and how in this life she had caused the death of him. So but now, due to the grace of my Guru Maharaj, and due to the grace of this chanting of this Bhagavad Gita chapter 14, and somehow just by even receiving the water which has washed the foot of a disciple, a dedicated disciple of a person who was dedicated to the glory of chanting the chapter 14 of Bhagavad Gita, just by receiving that water, that two rabbits and the dog became completely purified. Not only purified, all the sins were removed, and they were able to attain Vaikuntha Loka immediately. So that was the story. So after saying this, Lord Shiva said, after hearing the glories of the 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, King Vikram Betal also began the daily reciting the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So he accepted initiation from this Guru also. So together, by the guidance of the disciple of the Guru and by the Guru, Viksha, the sage, he also completely repented from his sinful activities and took up spiritual practice very seriously. And in this way, he perfected his life. And Lord Shiva describes how at the end of his life, he also gave up that body and went to Vaikuntha, where he was able to engage eternally in the service of the lotus feet of Sri Vishnu. So he actually received bhakti at the end of it. So to receive liberation, even to go to the planet of Lord Vishnu and to remain there, it's quite easy to attain in this material world simply by the grace of the Lord in so many ways. Just like how the rabbit and the dog, without doing anything, just by its fortunate situation of Agyata Sukriti, of receiving the fortune of a devotee, they were able to be liberated. But what's more important than liberation itself is to receive bhakti. So bhakti is not ordinary. Bhakti, one has to be serious in spiritual life to develop that bhakti. Because even if you go to Vaikuntha Loka, if we do not have bhakti, our desires will bring us down into this material world again. So that's why we have to develop this bhakti, because that bhakti will protect us from getting impure desires. And in this way, we will remain in the spiritual world for eternity. So with this, Lord Shiva concludes the pastime of this glory of this Gita Mahatmya of chapter 14. So we can understand several things from this story. How it's so important, Agyata Sukriti is so important. What is this Agyata Sukriti? How can one get bhakti? How can get one purified? There are different ways to get purified, right? So to be clear of karma, to remove one's karma, not only the prarabdha karma, the aprarabdha karma, the prarabdha karma, the bija, the kuttam, all these different levels of karma can all be cleared by performance of devotional service or getting some the mercy of the devotee or the mercy of the Lord. And how is the mercy of the Lord given? So we have already discussed before the mercy of the Lord, the 6 boats, right? The chanting of the holy names of the Lord, simply by chanting the names, the glories, the pastimes, right? That is Great, great mercy of how one can remove all one's karma. Another is to take shelter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is another way to remove everything. The third one is to serve pure devotees of the Lord, such as Tulasi Maharani. So worship of Tulasi, that's another boat which can save us from this material ocean. And the fourth one is service of Ganga. So Ganga is another pure devotee of the Lord. So that's the fourth one. And then the fifth one is to receive the Charanamrita, to receive the water which has washed the lotus feet of the Lord. And it is said that the Lord is merciful, but even more merciful is the devotees. So we worship the Lord's lotus feet, the Kamala Pada, Padma, the lotus feet of the Lord is worshipable. Why? Because it is the means of our salvation. And the water which has washed that lotus feet of the Lord, that is the medicine which can remove everything. But even more merciful, sometimes the lotus feet of the Lord is also described in a different way. The lotus feet is, the devotees of the Lord are described as the dust which sits on the lotus feet of the Lord. So, the devotees are always attracted to the Lord's lotus feet. And they are like the dust which sits on the lotus feet of the Lord. And so, in other words, the devotees are like the lotus feet of the Lord. So the Lord's mercy flows through the devotees. The Lord's mercy cannot flow through any other way. That's the way the Lord has made it so. He wants to glorify the devotees of the Lord, and he wants to see whether we are able to surrender to a pure devotee. Then he will say, okay, if you can surrender to a pure devotee who is my representative, then I can accept that you can surrender to me. So, the Lord doesn't appear directly in front of us because we are not so great personality. So therefore, he sends his pure devotees. So if we can surrender to a pure devotee, to accept his instructions and to serve that pure devotee, then the Lord becomes pleased. And in this way, the mercy flows through the pure devotee to us. So this is called Agyata Sukriti. So that's why this disciple who washed the feet of his guru, he served the guru with great attention and devotion, and he followed the instructions to the letter. And this guru was also not an impostor. He was a pure devotee of the Lord, dedicated to serving Bhagavad Gita, particularly chapter 14. And in this way, the mercy flowed through the guru, the sage Viksha, to the disciple, and even the water which washed the disciples' feet was sufficient to simply liberate the animals within that region. So that is the point of Agyata Sukriti. So it shows how important it is to serve the pure devotees of the Lord, to take their association, to whenever the opportunity arises, to any time to take that opportunity to render some kind of service so that we can get that mercy, which will plant that seed of bhakti within our heart. That's the only way it can plant. And it will, and that mercy will also help us to purify us, to help us to see with our eyes the understanding of the scriptures. So that is important. So devotional service is not something which we can do independently. It has to come through disciplic succession. It has to come through the mercy of a pure devotee. So anyway, so that's one lesson which we can understand, the importance of that. We can also see how another interesting point here is to see how karma works. So you can see, how it chases you life after life. There's no escaping universal justice in any way. So, okay, so that's basically the story of the Gita Mahatmya. So now let us continue with the conclusion, with the summary of this chapter 14. So chapter 14 is known as the three modes of material nature. Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. And it began with Prakriti Jnana for Paramgatim. That means where here Krishna will declare. He says, this is the first verse. He'll say, again, I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection. So what is this knowledge he's talking about? He's talking about the knowledge of what he described previously in chapter 13. So I'll just do a quick recap of chapter 13 so that we can understand what is this knowledge which he is now further going to elaborate in chapter 14. So that knowledge was known as jnana. Okay. So if you remember chapter 13, so the Lord, he is known as Purusha, right? And the jivas who are his part and parcel, his amsa, right? Mama jiva amsa. So that means the jivas are parts and parcels of the Lord, like the children of the Lord, example, right? So they are mostly dasas. Majority of the jivas in the spiritual world are servants of the Supreme Lord. So we talked about this previously. But there are a few, about a quarter of these jivas, and they want to enjoy independently of the Lord. They failed to develop that bhakti. They did not develop that service attitude. So dasa means servant, and bhakti means service attitude towards the Lord, right? So they failed to develop bhakti, and because they failed to develop bhakti, they developed envy, and they wanted to enjoy in the same capacity as the Lord. So they wanted to be Purusha. So the Lord created a special field for them, a separate field where they can go and satisfy this desire to enjoy separately from the Lord. And this separate field was called the material, is based on the material energy, which is the shadow of the spiritual energy. So this we discussed in chapter 13 previously. So this kshetra, this field which the Lord creates for the jivas to satisfy their desires, is also made up of the energy of the Lord also. But this energy is called the inferior energy of the Lord. It's the shadow of the spiritual energy. So that is Prakriti. Prakriti is material, right? And this Prakriti creates this material world in various forms. And in previous chapter 13, in the last week, right, we discussed about how this chapter is all about, the chapter 13 was all about the knowledge of how one is spirit, the jiva is spirit, and matter, prakriti is matter. Jiva and matter cannot mix. It is always separate. Sarirasto pi kaunteya na karoti na lipyate. Despite contact with the material body, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. This is the verse here. So we heard about how the body, the body is created from the 5 Panchabhuta elements, and then we had the subtle body, and then how the subtle body and the gross body, both material, is imprisoning the soul deep inside. But though the soul is associating with this body, which is made out of matter, there is no interaction directly. It is always separate, because one is spirit, one is matter. So matter and spirit cannot mix. But by the desire of the spirit, matter is moving accordingly to his desires. So it's like a remote control. It's like we control the body remotely, right? It's like virtual reality. We control virtual reality through the computer, right? But we are not in the computer. So, but at the same time, we don't mix, but we control it. So in the same way, the body is controlled by the jiva, which is living inside. So we talked about this previously. So the verse here, so while the jiva is interacting with the body, what happens is according to the jiva's desires, the body acts in various ways. And when the body acts in various ways, there are results to those activities. One activity will invite a particular reaction. So every activity has its own reaction. So according to that activity, we receive the reactions. And what gives us these reactions? So nature or prakriti or material energy is the agency which serves us that results. So just like we go to a restaurant, we order something. So who serves us the order? We have made the desire, we have made the choice to order something. And what serves us the order is material energy. So according to our desire, we made the body act in a certain way, and accordingly, material energy will react with us. Okay, so in this way, so it says here, Hetu Prakritir Uchyate. So what serves us our reaction is Prakriti. Prakriti is the instrument. Hetu who means instrument. Prakriti is the instrument which serves us our reactions. But who is the cause of those reactions ultimately? If we didn't desire, if we didn't act in a certain way, those reactions wouldn't come to us, right? So therefore, Purusha, the spirit soul who has this enjoying mentality, who is conditioned, therefore he's called Purusha. He is the cause. Hetur Uchyate. Purusha Hetur Uchyate. He is the cause, he is the instrument that causes his own reactions. And what are these reactions? Sukha, dukkha. So sukha means happiness and dukkha means misery. So he receives this either happiness or distress based on his desires which he has made. So that was discussed previously in chapter 13. This was basically the recap of chapter 13. And we also understood here and there in different chapters, in chapter 13 or so, how Prakriti, material nature, to go deeper into the study of material nature has its nature. So what is its nature of this material nature? Prakriti, Durga Devi, basically. So the nature is made out of these three modes: mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance, sattva, rajas, and tamas. This is the nature of Prakriti, how it works. So sometimes it is sattva, just like the ocean. Sometimes the ocean is very calm, peaceful, early in the morning, no rain, nothing. It's very beautiful, picturesque. But that same ocean can be a place of very great activity. You know, as the day passes, lots of boats, everybody sitting in the ocean, trying to enjoy, trying to get all kinds of activities from the ocean. A bit of wind blows, the ocean starts to become choppy. So mode of passion comes into being. At the same time, a storm may come and the ocean may whiplash. It may, huge waves, everything looks scary and dark and fearsome. Fearsome aquatic creatures may be there. So mode of ignorance. And then again, it may come back to, after the storm may pass, and again it may be goodness again. So like that, there is always a constant turmoil, always constant changing of these three modes within this material world. And according to that also, we have got a type of body which is made up of these three modes. And we have got a set of mind, our subtle body, our material body. They are all rotating amongst these three modes. So we will hear more about these three modes in chapter 14. So that is this knowledge which Krishna is telling. By understanding these three modes of this nature is very important. Why? First understanding is to understand that we are the soul. Second understanding, that we have to understand that we are conditioned in this material world. So soul is conditioned by matter. And then we understood the deeper mechanics about the body, about the subtle body, how the subtle body is made. So all these points were discussed previously. But that is not alone enough. More than that, we need to understand, because we are in this material body, we are in this material world, we need to know how the material body and the material world works, so that we can understand what traps us, what doesn't trap us, what causes misery, what doesn't cause misery, and what can we do to escape. So that's why this knowledge of the three modes of material nature is very critical. We need to understand that. So therefore, with these three modes of material nature, the living entity is taking birth after birth after birth, in different bodies, controlled by these three modes of material nature. Why is it controlled? So you can see here this verse, the living entity in material nature, right? The Jiva in Prakriti, thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. So if he wasn't associating with material nature, then there are no three modes. So that's why the aim of spiritual life is to teach us to associate with spirit rather than with material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. So why does that happen? So, fueled by our various impressions, as we are growing up, we get various impressions. As we are growing up, we also feel certain impressions like, oh, I also want, this is a nice thing to do, or that's a nice thing to do. We learn from our parents, we learn from various things which creates impressions in our mind. A mind is a vessel which keeps all those impressions, many images, pictures, all these things are like a storage in our mind. And as we think about them, suddenly this image might come, suddenly another image might come. So as we contemplate upon them, rati or attachment starts to form for that particular image. So that's the seed of desire, bija. So therefore, these impressions are called vasanas. In our different lives, in our different moments, constantly we are receiving impressions of what's happening around us. So this is called vasanas. And these vasanas, as we contemplate upon them, leads to desires. And this desire is what is fueling us to take life after life after life, trying to chase after those desires, trying to satisfy that desire. So where did it come from originally? It came originally because we wanted to enjoy like the Lord, right? Remember the original fall down? Because we wanted to enjoy like the Lord. Why did we develop this kind of negative feeling? Because we did not have the protection of bhakti. We did not develop bhakti. So therefore we fell down. So that's why liberation alone is not enough. We may be liberated, but we will fall down until we develop bhakti for the Supreme Lord. So then we can be firmly established in the spiritual kingdom. So now that we have desires, right? So why don't we satisfy our desires? We satisfy our desires, yes, but unfortunately for us, there are rules in this material world, because we cannot satisfy our desire at the cost of another living entity. So we are all sharing this material creation. So we cannot satisfy our desires at the cost of causing harm to another living entity. No, there needs to be some rules and regulations. Just like in a school. In a school, there may be different students. One student cannot get the favor of the teacher by creating harm to another student. So everybody has to learn to coexist in peace. So in order to coexist, there must be certain sets of rules. So these rules cannot be manufactured by each student individually, thinking that, oh, these rules are good enough. No, the rule has to come from the teacher. The teacher will set the rule, and then the students follow the rule. In this way, there will be harmony within the class. So in the same way, in the kingdom of God, God sets the rules, not us. We don't define what is dharma. We don't define what is religiosity. We don't define what is morality. We can think that way, but in the end, it's not going to help us. We are going to suffer the reactions, whether we like it or not, irrespective of what we believe. It's going to happen anyway. So it has to be based on God's words, because He is the creator and He reserves the right to set the rules. And that rule defines our desire. It creates a boundary across our desire. So these laws are called the laws of karma. So as we do, we deserve. As we act, we experience, whether it is suffering or enjoyment. So bound by, fueled by our desires and bound by our karma, we go through different species of life, going through good and evil among various species. So this is what Bhagavad Gita says. And that's what's happening everywhere. So basically, this is recap. So now we were talking about this aspects of Purusha, Kshetra. Kshetra is the field, and then the Jiva is the Purusha in this way, and then there's the ultimate Purusha, the Supreme Lord. So all of this, spirit, matter, all of this is known as Brahman. It is ultimately Brahman. Brahman means everything is of the Lord. Brahman, what is Brahman? Brahman means of the Lord, coming from the Lord, part of the Lord, part and parcel of the Lord. So why do we say everything is Brahman? The Lord is certainly Brahman. In fact, He is called Para-Brahman, the origin of that Brahman, the greatest of the Brahman. And the Jivas come from the Lord. So they are made up of the same kind of matter, right? So therefore, the Jivas are also Brahman, coming from the Lord, part of His energy. Material nature, though it is material, is also coming from the Lord. So therefore, it is also Brahman, though it is material. So spirit, ultimately, spirit, matter, everything is Brahman, because it all comes from the Lord. And the Lord is also Brahman, and He is called Para-Brahman. So in Vedic literature, this word Brahman is used intermittently like this. It depends on the context of the word or the usage to understand which Brahman that the scripture is talking about. So one who is able to understand this, the Kshetri, that means the soul who is in the Kshetra, in the body, if he is able by good fortune to understand all of these, and not only understand, to really realize this knowledge very much, then this knowledge is called jnana. So this alone is called jnana. To know the difference between body and spirit, to know the workings of the body, the workings of the spirit, to know the interactions between the two, and to know how to separate, how to escape, how to come back to the spiritual world, and to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the fountainhead of everything, as the Para-Brahman, as the Jnaya, the knowable. So all of this is called knowledge. Anything other than this is not knowledge, because it doesn't serve the purpose of this material creation and why we are here. So it is all simply ignorance. Everything else that doesn't touch these principles. That is conclusion of scripture. And one who develops the eyes to see all of this, to understand this knowledge, to see this practically, he is called Kshetranya, one who has realized spirit and matter, to know the difference. And there's a verse, Kshetra Kshetranyayor evam antaram jnana chaksusa, the eyes to see, the eyes of knowledge, right? One who has got the eyes to see everything, the jnana chakshusha, what happens to him? So what's the benefit of being a Kshetranya? What happens is he becomes Bhuta Prakriti Moksham. He becomes liberated from conditioned Prakriti. So by developing this highest of knowledge, he becomes liberated, right? And he attains, and he becomes eligible. Ye vidur, he becomes eligible to attain the supreme. Yanti te param. So this is what happens. This is the result of knowing this. And that is basically what chapter 14 is talking about. Chapter 14 is now talking further about this Prakriti. Chapter 13 gave the big picture, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetranya, and all this was given in chapter 13. Chapter 14 now focuses deeper into understanding Prakriti, specifically the three modes of nature, because this is very critical for the understanding of liberating ourselves. So therefore, the knowledge of Jnana, Brahman and Prakriti from 14.3 to 14.5. So Krishna talks about the Mahatattva as the basis of life, how Krishna is the supreme father of all jivas, to understand the goal of knowledge, right? This is Jnana. And then he also talks about material nature, the three modes. So to understand this, this Mahatattva and everything, we covered this in level 1, but let me quickly cover this again in level 2 so that we can have a brief understanding of this topic. So as I've already mentioned, the Lord, the possessor of all energies, right? He has what we call the spiritual energy known as Antaranga Shakti, of which the jivas are also part of it, a splinter of this Antaranga Shakti, spirit, right? Spirit. And this Antaranga Shakti casts a shadow. So the shadow of this Antaranga Shakti is Bahiranga Shakti, material energy. So this material energy is shadow of this Antaranga Shakti. Just like Krishna has a front and he has the back. So the front part is his spiritual energy, which he interacts with. The back part of him is the material energy, which he doesn't interact with. Just like us, do we interact with our back? We don't. We see the front. We always walk in the front. We don't even see our back. We don't even look at our back. So in the same way, Krishna interacts with his spiritual energy. He doesn't interact with his material energy. But nevertheless, the material energy has its uses. So both energies are for the pleasure of the Lord. And all of this is called Brahman. Both material and spiritual and the Lord are Brahman, including the Jiva also. Whereas the Lord alone is known as Parabrahma, separate. So now we are going to talk more about this Bahiranga Shakti, this material energy. Now let's take an acorn. So this acorn, it develops. Initially the acorn can remain for many years as an acorn without growing if the conditions are not right. That means if you take this acorn and put this acorn inside a box covered from light and don't give it water, it will remain like that for many months. But the moment this acorn receives light and water, sunlight and water, what will happen to this acorn? This acorn will start to germinate. So the word germinate, activity, the cells will start to, mitosis will start happening. So this will happen. And as a result, in due course of time, this acorn will sprout. And initially it sprouts as a single thing, just a single piece of something coming out from the acorn. But eventually it will differentiate, and form this complex organism called the banyan tree. So it's all from the acorn. So much of differentiation until it completely forms this. Just like us also, right? We initially started off as a zygote, and then from the zygote we became fetus, right? So like that, and then finally we the cells split, differentiated. Just from the cell, it formed so many different complex organs. So in the same way, Material energy, you know that material energy which is from the Lord, this Bahiranga Shakti, right? Initially, it is inert. So there's one difference between this Bahiranga Shakti and the spiritual energy. The Bahiranga Shakti is constantly changing. It always changes. So initially it is inert, just like the acorn, and therefore it is called Pradhan. So that is the state of this Bahiranga Shakti in the beginning. Unmanifested, it's not yet manifested, and it's undifferentiated. And then, just like how the acorn received the sunlight and the water, in the same way, this Pradhan became, it starts to germinate. So something caused the Pradhan to germinate. It agitated this Pradhan. It started to get energy. So the moment it starts germinating, technically it's now no longer Pradhan. It is called Prakriti. What's the difference? It is still undifferentiated, still in the acorn form, but what's the difference between this acorn and this acorn? This one already energy started to generate it. So it's manifested. Prakriti manifests. The shadow now takes form, manifests. And then, just like how the acorn sprouts into the various different initial sprouting starts to happen. So this is called Mahatattva. Difference between Prakriti and Mahatattva, both are manifest, right? Energetic already, but still there is a difference. One is undifferentiated, still the single acorn, everything is inside this acorn. Whereas the Mahatattva, it already starts to sprout. It's already differentiating. So it's differentiating until finally the entire cosmos is created, the material nature, the material creation, the three modes, all the various elements, the earth, water, air, sky, everything is created. That is Mahatattva. And in chapter 13, we have heard about how, the gross elements, the Panchabhuta, the knowledge acquiring senses, the Karmendriyas, they have all combined with the subtle body, which is made up of mind, intelligence, and ego. Just to enjoy the sense objects, the soul enters into this arrangement. So all this is described in chapter 14 in detail. So coming back to this Bahiranga Shakti, so therefore, initially it was Pradhan, unmanifested, undifferentiated, but for the purpose of creation, right, the Lord energizes this Pradhan and it becomes Prakriti, energetic already. It's manifested, but still not differentiated. And then as the Lord gazes upon this Prakriti, the Prakriti manifests, and the Jivas now have a place to go in Prakriti. So it's for this purpose Pradhan was energized. So the Jiva can come to this material world. So how does this happen? What is that thing that energizes? Just like the acorn receives sunlight and rainwater, so it became energetic. So what energized the Pradhan to become Prakriti? So it is said that it is the gaze of the Lord. The gaze of the Lord upon Pradhan. So Durga, or energy of the Lord, Durga, the material energy of the Lord, she is Pradhan, and the Lord gazes upon her. So that gaze, now this Lord, just like how we don't associate with the back of our body, we associate with the front, right? So the Lord associates only with his spiritual energy. He doesn't associate with the material energy. But to satisfy this Jiva's desire to enjoy separately, he accesses his material energy. But at the same time, he doesn't associate directly. So I'll tell you about that in a short moment. So anyway, what happens is, by his gaze upon this material energy, the material energy gets energized, and eventually it becomes Mahatattva, and Mahatattva finally creates this material creation, and now it is ready for the Jiva to move in. So the Jiva now moves into the Bahiranga Shakti and takes up its body and tries to enjoy matter. So this gaze of the Lord, as I mentioned, the Lord directly doesn't associate with material energy. So what does the Lord do? This gaze of the Lord is an incarnation of the Lord. So the Lord associates with the material energy by taking an incarnation, a separate expansion. So he expands as Lord Shiva. So what is this difference between Lord Shiva and other expansions of the Lord? So there is a very important difference. The other expansions of the Lord are eternal. So whereas Lord Shiva is also eternal, but he is eternally different from the Lord. So he comes from the Lord, but at the same time, he is not the Lord. How is to understand this? So it's the Acharyas explain, it is like milk. Imagine the Lord as milk. Now, milk, when you add culture to the milk turns into yogurt, correct? So Lord Shiva is like yogurt, Lord Vishnu is like milk. So when culture is introduced into milk, then milk changes into yogurt. So when Lord Vishnu glances upon material energy, that glance is that Lord Shiva, and in this way, he associates with the material energy in that way. So the Lord doesn't directly associate with material energy. He expands himself as Lord Shiva, and in this way, the Lord Shiva associates with the material energy, Durga. So therefore, we have Shiva and Shakti, Shiva and Durga. So Shiva and Durga together, they are the father and the mother of this material creation, Prakriti. At the same time, Lord Shiva, he is like the Lord, but he is not the Lord. He is eternally separated. He comes from the Lord, but he is eternally separated. Just like yogurt. Yogurt is not milk, but it comes from milk. And yogurt's function is different, milk's function is different. So yogurt associates with, it's with culture already. And milk can become yogurt. Milk is the source of yogurt. So you cannot say that yogurt is the source of milk. Can we make milk out of yogurt? There is no technology at the moment which can create milk out of yogurt. The transformation is permanent and irreversible. So in the same way, Lord Shiva expands from Lord Vishnu, and that expansion is permanent and irreversible. So Lord Vishnu can become Lord Shiva, but Lord Shiva cannot become Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu is the supreme, whereas Lord Shiva is not the supreme. So that is the understanding, and that is the tattva. So in this way, by glancing at this material creation, Lord Shiva associates with Durga, and they form the basis of this material creation. And therefore, sometimes Lord Shiva and Durga are known as the father and mother of the universe. But we have to understand that they are not the direct father and the mother they are the direct father and the mother, but they are not the ultimate father and the mother. Because ultimately everything comes from the energy of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, right? From Krishna. In this way, we can understand. So that's why the Lord Shiva and Durga, they are sometimes worshipped as Linga. What is this Linga? This Linga is the representation of the union between Lord Shiva and Lord Durga. Not Lord Durga, Lord Shiva and Mother Durga. So this Linga represents the male organ and the female reproductive organ. So it's the combination of both, right? So that is basically Shiva and Shakti together. So this union creates the jivas are impregnated into the womb of Mother Prakriti. by the agency of Lord Shiva directly. So, but ultimately, it all comes from the glance of the Lord. So therefore, Bhagavad Gita 14.4, it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. So, and this description is very briefly given in Bhagavad Gita, but it is elaborately explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's why I'm putting all these things over here. Okay. So that is basically chapter 14, the first part where it talks about Mahatattva, which is the basis of life, how Krishna is the supreme father of all jivas. And then it talks about the material nature, which consists of three modes. And it goes on to talk about the three qualities. What are these three modes and the qualities of these three modes, characteristics, and the results of working or acting in these three modes. So we've talked about that in level 1. You can go through that in detail, or you can read Gita. But here I'll just summarize it for you in context. So basically the three modes, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, goodness, passion, ignorance. And it is described in this way. What are the characteristics of goodness? Characteristic of goodness is knowledge. It is illuminated, is illuminating. Mode of goodness is illuminated by knowledge. And it is free of sin. So one who acts in knowledge, he doesn't worry about sin because he knows what is right, what is not right. So therefore, sinful reactions doesn't touch. That is characteristic of mode of goodness. And therefore, it is very important that we should live our life as much as possible in the mode of goodness. We must, because we are in this material world, we must be situated in one of these three modes. And best to be situated in the mode of goodness. And from the mode of goodness, we transcend. It's not possible to transcend from the mode of passion or the mode of ignorance directly. It has to eventually come to the mode of goodness. Stability is attained, and then from there you transcend. So the binding, but even the mode of goodness keeps us tied down in this material world. It is also a bound. It is also a rope. So how are we bound? We are bound by a sense of happiness. So we think everything is already nice, everything is good, you know, other people are suffering, but I'm not suffering. My life is nice. So it's okay lah. I don't have to do this spiritual activity and everything. So that kind of feeling is there. So therefore, we have to be careful that it doesn't bind us. A feeling of satisfaction, a feeling of knowledge, and a feeling of superiority. So sometimes there is a bit of pride. Oh, I'm better than them. You know, they are all like this. I'm better. So these kind of feelings can trap us within the mode of goodness. So we have to watch out. What are the things that trap us here, which makes us negligent to spiritual pursuits? So this is what happens in the mode of goodness. And the result of acting in the mode of goodness, we get piety, we get knowledge, and when we die situated in the mode of goodness, we attain higher planets as heavenly bodies and things like that. So that's mode of goodness, but it doesn't liberate. Mode of goodness is not sufficient to give us liberation. For that, we need to transcend the three modes. And then there's the mode of passion, right? So characteristics are, the main thing to remember here is desires, unlimited, intense longings and desires. I want, I want, I want, I wish, I wish, I wish. So sometimes it's not just us directly, it is our desire through our family members or through other people. Oh, I want that you study well and you grow up well and then you become this person or that person, and then I want, I want, I want. So I want that you, so in this way it continues from us to our children, to our grandchildren, and in this way it continues on. So that is mode of passion. Intense desires, great attachment, and fruitive activities. Give and take. I want this for a result. So of course, the binding force is very obvious. Attachment is the binding force for mode of passion. And one who dies situated in this mode of passion, he again takes birth amongst those, basically human birth again. He takes back amongst human life and goes through the various desires, try to satisfy his desires. But ultimately, the result of the mode of passion is simply misery. Nothing but it increases the greed and it simply leads to misery. That's all. So that is mode of passion. Then we have mode of ignorance. So this is opposite of goodness. If goodness is knowledge, is illuminating, whereas ignorance is darkness and illusion, which is not really knowledge. And inertia, don't want to do anything, just remain as it was, don't want to make any, one has to do something in order to attain something. So inertia is complete inert laziness. And binding force here, what keeps the person continuously in this situation? Illusion, madness. They create their own world, they live in their own world. And then laziness, this binds them. And sleep, this is escape. The world is difficult, so let me just escape into sleep, or escape into virtual reality, or escape into serials, alternate universe, which is illusion. Result, nothing but ignorance, madness, and illusion. And those who die in the mode of ignorance, they go to lower species of life or hellish planets. So these are the three modes. So we can understand and study this very carefully and try to understand this. So then chapter 14 goes on, the three modes. Then he talks about how these three modes are controlling us basically, and how we can transcend the three modes. Why we want to transcend? So that we can attain the highest goal. So that is described. So here it says 1420, when the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes, which is associated with the material body, what happens? He can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So therefore, the Kshetranya, the eyes, Jnana Chakshu, very important. One has to develop these eyes to see all these things and to act in this way. And for that, one has to bring ourselves at least to the mode of goodness, by gradually, right? It's not immediately one can do. Gradually, one has to bring ourselves to the mode of goodness. By a culture of knowledge and spiritual practice, we can attain this. And how to understand who is this person who is now able to understand with this kind of eyes of knowledge. So therefore, so that we don't delude ourselves, we symptoms of such a person is given in the Bhagavad Gita. So one who does not hate the modes and qualities. So this is very important. We cannot harbor negativity in our heart. We cannot see what's happening in this world and develop hatred. The government is doing like this. Oh, the people in our world are behaving like this. Oh, the material, so much of suffering, flood has happened, this has happened, that has happened. So one cannot develop negativity and hatred. One has to understand how all these things are simply working due to material nature serving what has been ordered only by the living entities. So it's one doesn't become callous and insensitive, but one doesn't develop hate towards this. One understands that this is all happening for reasons, just reasons. And then one who is unwavering and undisturbed. So therefore he becomes, it doesn't disturb his duty. It doesn't disturb the execution of his spiritual activities. So whatever that happens, it happens, he understands, but it doesn't demotivate that person or anything like that. He remains fixed in his activity. One who remains neutral and transcendental. So he doesn't become partisan doesn't take sides. He understands, okay, this all happens, let me focus in what is important to me. So that he becomes fixed in that. He doesn't get sidetracked. One who knows that the modes alone are active. So all this is already preordained and it's working according to the arrangement of higher energies. One, and therefore he's equipoised. So this is same thing. He's neither happy nor sad. He's neither distressed. He's fixed constantly in his spiritual practices. And one who sees with equal vision. He doesn't distinguish the bodies of different people. He sees Paramatma in everybody's heart. He sees the spark of divinity in everyone. And in the same way, he acts accordingly. He sees how everything is the energy of the Lord. So in this way, he doesn't waste anything. He doesn't say that, oh, this is your electricity, let me use your electricity. Wherever he goes, he tries to conserve electricity. Wherever he goes, he doesn't litter. He keeps the environment clean because he understands everything is Krishna's energy. So automatically a devotee is automatically an environmentalist, automatically every ism, he's already part of that. Doesn't have to separately understand. And one who is renounced of material activities. So he, in this way, understanding, he becomes renounced of material activities. He dedicates his valuable human life and energy simply for spiritual advancement. That is Sthita Prajna. So we have to come to this point. And how do we do this? Very important verse. Very, very, very important verse. Let's take this verse back with us. How do we transcend the three modes? How do we bring ourselves from the lower modes to the higher modes and eventually transcend? How can we do this? So therefore, Krishna gives this very nice verse. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Immediately he becomes to that level. So therefore, the key here is devotional service. We practice devotional service, practice until we come to the point where we constantly execute devotional service. No matter what is, come snow or rain or hail, whether we are sick or we are not sick, whether we feel like it or we don't feel like it, we don't give up the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. We don't give up our culture of hearing, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. So that immediately one is able to transcend the three modes. So one who dies in that situation automatically attains the Param Gatim. So this is what Prabhupada did. He introduced devotional service to people in the mode of ignorance, to people in the mode of passion, the hippies. And all of them were able to immediately transcend by the practice of devotional service to come to the mode of Brahman, spirituality. And this Brahman, what is this Brahman? Krishna says here, I am the basis of that Brahman. So the point of Brahman is ultimately to attain me, Parabrahman. And this Brahman, everything, Brahman is this, all the energies, including the Jiva, they all come from that one ultimate Parabrahman. So this is the evidence of that Parabrahman from the Gita. I am the basis. He differentiates. I am Brahman, but I am at the same time the basis of that personal Brahman. So this is basically chapter 14. So we've concluded chapter 14. Sorry to take up a bit more extra time a bit. So let us end with this food for the soul. Let us together chant this mantra. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
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 Krishna,
Hare
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 Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama
Rama, Hare
Rama Rama
Rama, Rama
Rama Hare
Rama,
Hare
Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna Hare
Krishna,
Hare
Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama
Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama Hare
Rama, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna Hare
Krishna,
Hare
Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama
Rama, Rama
Rama Hare
Rama, Hare
Hare.
Hare.
Om Tat Sat. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Sri
Jai.
Krishna Bhagavan ki Jai. So thank you very much. So any questions anyone wants to raise? Hopefully by the grace of Krishna and by the chanting of the holy names, we can understand more and more, further and further into the mysteries of the Bhagavad Gita.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yes Prabhu.
Prabhu, I have a question. Earlier you talked about the verse 13:21, right? The nature is the cause of the material happiness and distress, and then the living entity is also the cause, right, of whatever he's going through, right?
Yep.
I just have a doubt because in Bhagavad Gita 2.47, I mean, Krishna also says that never think that you are the cause of the results or the fruit of fruitive actions. Then I am the cause, right? So how to relate? I mean, how to understand this properly?
Okay, right. So basically, we desire. So the jiva, he doesn't have the capability to do anything because he doesn't control the energies. So he can only desire, and without, it's like a baby, you know, it's like a baby. He desires, but he has no capability to do anything. So it is the mother. I desire this toy. The mother picks the toy and gives. I desire this. The auntie takes this and gives to the child. So like that, the child is served in various ways. So what this word says is, we want things to happen. So it's the desire of the Lord, it's desire of the jiva, but it's not we who make it happen. By the grace of the Lord, he allows our desires to be satisfied as per our karmic arrangements. So the agency of the Lord which satisfies the desire, it's the Lord ultimately who satisfies the desire, but he doesn't directly do it. So therefore, he in chapter 2 he says, ultimately it's all due to me. If at all you get something, you know, like the Muslims like to say, you know, yang baik semuanya daripada Allah, yang buruk semuanya daripada saya. So like that, the Lord, by his agency, he sends the material energy to serve us that platter. The material energy will serve us according to our activity and according to our karma. So therefore, we are not the doers, but we are the desirers. So we are not the doer, we desire, and material energy is the doer. So material energy, by the command of the Lord, is the doer. So this is the understanding.
Okay, Prabhu, one more question.
Yes.
You mentioned about the energy, right, Prabhu? The Bahiranga Shakti is due to the glance of the Lord, right, on the material energy, so that it gets agitated, right? So how Lord Brahma comes into this picture, Prabhu? Because you said Lord Shiva and Parvati is the father of the universe. So then we also see Narayana from his navel, the lotus coming out, right? So
thank you for that. So there are different levels of creation. So like for example, why are we born? We are born because of our father and our mother. But who created our father and our mother? So like that, it goes back. So ultimately, in this universe, Lord Brahma is the ultimate creator in this universe. But if you talk about all universes, the entire cosmos, the material Prakriti itself, because Prakriti contains many universes. So then the ultimate behind that is Shiva and Parvati. So that is the ultimate manifest of the material energy in the cosmos of the entire world. And beyond that also, the ultimate, that's why Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes, after many causes, ultimately it's all traced towards Govinda. Sarva Karana Karanam Govindam Adi Purusham. So it is by his desire, by his glance, by his agitation of the Pradhan, in that way, the glance, he expands himself as the Gunavatar Lord Shiva. And then in this way, he permanently expands himself. And then the material cosmos is created. And then Garbhodakashayi Vishnu enters into each universe. And then from that each universe, a navel sprouts the lotus. And from there, Lord Brahma, the engineer and the architect. You see, the elements are created, the energies are created, everything is ready. Now you need an engineer to start building the bodies of each living entity. So that is Lord Brahma's role here. So Lord Brahma is the architect, the original principal engineer of this universe. And in this way, he creates the bodies of all living entities. So therefore, he is also called creator. So like that, there are different levels and causes of creators. That's the understanding, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Clear.
Okay. Thank you very much for your questions. So sorry if anybody is being held up. Please feel free to leave anytime. Anyway, we are done. Any other questions anyone wants to raise? Okay. So I don't see anything further on the chat. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes.
Level 2, right?
Yeah.
What is the lesson?
Say again. What is the lesson for?
After level 2 is completed, what will be the next lesson?
Oh, okay. Well, level 2, once we complete up to 18 chapters of the Gita Mahatmya and 1 or 2 more special topics, then we will end. And then after that, I mean, there is no plan further. I do have a plan on doing Srimad Bhagavatam. We will start looking at Srimad Bhagavatam, but this is only open for those who are interested. I don't want to, push everyone to that. This is more of a, it's for those who are further interested in understanding, going deeper into the scriptures and all that. So it will end formally with level 2, and then beyond that will be something further with Srimad Bhagavatam, like that. Yes, Mataji.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Or unless you have any special topics you want me to speak on, I can also do that. So if you would like me to speak on any particular topics, I can include that in level 2 itself. So level 2 is mainly to answer all your questions, to anything on spirituality that you feel like you want to know further. I can explore those topics. Failing to raise any of those points, I will continue with my Gita Mahatmyas until it ends in chapter 18. After that, we'll see how, we'll discuss at that time. Okay, Mataji, all right?
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so if there's nothing further, then thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, possible to speak a topic on Garuda Puranam?
Well, that's an entire topic on its own. So there are many aspects of it. I don't recommend you to read Garuda Purana because you need to understand the topics of Gita first thoroughly, because Garuda Purana you can get confused in some things. You must understand the bigger picture first, and the recommendation is we understand Bhagavad Gita and we understand Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the ultimate conclusion. When we get the conclusion correct, then we can discuss these other topics. Anyway, we will include here and there some verses here and there from the various Puranas to highlight certain topics. Like Garuda Purana basically talks about the science of physiognomy. That means the various signs. So that's one thing. It talks about the hellish planets. It talks about dharma. There are some stories also in there. So, but it's not transcendental. It is still in the 3 modes. So you must understand these Puranas, they are in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And if we do not understand what is transcendence, it's not easy for us to understand these topics properly in the right context. So anyway, that's my take on that. So my recommendation is we move to Bhagavatam. That is more important. Everything that is covered in the other Puranas is covered in the Bhagavatam and more. So therefore, if you want to hear about the hellish planets, it's also described in the Bhagavatam. So we will see about that. Okay? Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Okay, Prabhu. I just want to get your idea, that's all.
No problem, no problem. Okay, then. So I'll see you all. Thank you so much, everybody. Hare Krishna. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.